Okay, last fan question. I think this is a very interesting one. Garm V's has asked, if you've ever left the wrestling bubble for an extended period of time, how did you take it mentally? How is it also being a part of the bubble once more, but not as a performer, but instead providing commentary? I've added a load of follow-up questions here. But essentially, the wrestling bubble, when you leave the wrestling bubble for a long period of time, what changes in your brain that makes you realize you're in a bubble in the first place?
Well, I think number one would be what we talk about and joke about off camera more, and the terminology starts to be erased from your vocabulary. You don't say gimmick and sabida and this thing. When you don't name something, you don't know what it is. For a time, you're like, what's that gimmick there? I don't know if they do it in modern days, but the terminology, kayfabe, all this stuff, it's a work, it's a shoot, that starts to go away. And I think from our show, you can tell we don't use it really as much as possible. We might slip up or do whatever. You might say the brother line when you're interviewing somebody, that kind of thing.
The only time I did that was with Mosh.
I know, I laughed about
that. Because the only reason I did it was because I said, after we were just chatting beforehand, and I went, are you someone who uses the word brother 20 times a day? And he went, me and Thrasher, we've been in the business how many years? We've never called each other that. I don't get it. Then the first thing is sort of, how you doing, brother?
Yeah. It's just like it's something in the back of your mind. You had to do it because don't press that button, but you press the button, right? So what escapes you too is the Stockholm syndrome, but it doesn't escape you to a certain extent. I'm self-aware. Last episode, we talked about Taker, Michelle of the podcast, and I said, I'm going to let you know right now, the Stockholm syndrome is real. And as I say this and look at the show notes, I'm like, ooh, I'm going to get heat with Taker. I'm going to get heat with the locker room. And Matt Morgan, 20 years removed, left a comment on that video saying, I still feel that way. I'm the mayor of a city 20 years later, and I still get that dip in and dip out of Stockholm syndrome. Now, just because I said that doesn't mean I care what Taker thinks or says, or I'm not going to give my true, honest opinion and perspective. But the bubble is real because guess what? When I do a clip, friends will reach out that are current wrestlers, or friends will reach out that are after their TV careers and just doing indies and say, dude, you got to stop. You're never going to get booked again. I was like, you don't understand. I don't want to get booked again. I'm fine. I don't want to go back into the bubble, but I will get more texts than not. That Taker one especially. Dude, when Taker finds out, man, I go, well, did you watch the whole clip? Oh, no, I just read the title. You're done. Watch the clip. Or, you know what, dude, you're never going to get in the Hall of Fame. You're never going to get this. You're never going to get that. That's being in the bubble. That's being held hostage by the potential phone call. There's a lot of Dennis Stamps running around. But I'm telling you right now, outside of a planned parody open on a future episode, take a drink, you will not see me on the trampoline waiting for the call. And yes, we do have that opening planned.
The Dennis Stamp thing, for people who don't know, it was from a segment on a documentary over 25 years called Beyond the Mat. He was a wrestler in his early 50s, kind of looked like Andy Serkis, if you remember the actor. But like a larger, obviously more overweight one. And there was a bit where he was like, you never know when Vince McMahon is going to call, or you never know when you're going to get the call to go back in the business. He was in his early 50s, hadn't wrestled in, I don't know, a decade, 15 years plus. And he was on a trampoline with like these, 5-pound dumbbells,
baby bells,
let's say.
They call them.
These baby bells, doing that, bouncing on a trampoline in his trunks for the camera. And he was still so far removed from the business, doing a painting job or whatever he was doing. He was still in the bubble, hoping for that call. He never worked for Vince, as far as I can tell, unless he did a couple of shots here and there. And he still held on to that. And I think how many people in the business of a similar age, because he'll be a similar age to you now. How many people in their 50s who were kind of removed from WWE had some kind of run? You don't. But how many people do? What percentage? You never know.
I would say the high 90s. I would really say it's a lot of people because there's a lot of the business and in general, a lot of things in entertainment and even sports, more so entertainment, is based on this term, weaponized hope. They dangle that carrot. That's a real thing, dangling the carrot, putting the brass ring in front of you, but you never reach it. You never get the carrot. That's a real thing. That one more run mentality. If I have one more run, I can make money and then retire. Very few people ever leave on their own terms. I've never left a company outside of TNA, but it wasn't really on my own terms. It was like, I'm going to leave before they release me because I'm not going to get released by this company. No way. So these things happen. And guess what? Nobody ever retires in a way. You just stop getting booked. And then you wait and you wait and you wait. And the ones that move on, people almost, I think, resent them in a way. Oh, you think you're better than everybody else? Hey, you think you're better than everybody else? Tony Gurria thinks you're, whatever. But there is this resentment, but it's sort of, in a way, jealousy. You know what I get? Here's what I get more than anybody. And these are friends of mine that I still communicate with that are in or out of the business to a certain degree. Whenever I talk and I say, they go, and guess what? A lot of times these people are in the bubble. You know what? The one question that I never even ask you when they call or text or anything like that? How are you? How are you doing? How's the family? What's going? There's never the normal, it's right into it. Oh, I got a booking. I got this promoter is saying, oh, this indie promoter under WrestleMania. But guess what? You're on the phone with them entertaining this buffoonery of their indie show being their WrestleMania. But you know what they say to me about the show and the success of this or the fitness business or anything? Man, you just got lucky. I was like, you have no idea who I am, do you? The level of obsession to do this. And I've been trying to do this since 2002. Create content, create a brand, do the Madden Telestrator. I'm not puffing my own chest, but it is a wake-up call of just how much out of the wrestling bubble I am whenever somebody calls and I'm like, dude, I don't have time. I don't have 30 minutes to listen to, man, why won't they call me? Why won't they push me? Why won't they? And I've been there. But life is too short. I don't have enough energy. I got a business to run. I got brands to run. You've taught me that in a way that, like, dude, we got to focus on this and do things that are worth business. I don't know if that makes sense, but the way I look at it is I see that and I'm like, I want to help the other wrestlers and say there is a path after wrestling to actually make more money than you made in wrestling. There's a path to be ultra fulfilled and never age out and actually never take a bump.
Yeah, but few people can do it like we do it, or like Maven does it, or like Jim Cornette does it. There's very few people who can do it.
It doesn't even have to be podcasting. You can train people. You can, you can say, hey, listen, I can do cameos better than anybody else. I can do this, or maybe, I don't know. But within the wrestling business, and especially a place like WWE, it's so incestuous right now, and everybody's just, the only people that are getting chances are going to be offspring of the current legends or other people that they pick from outside. I tell people, young people that want to wrestle, how do I get over in wrestling? How do I become a star the fastest way possible? And I say, become a star somewhere else. And then they will bring you in and treat you better.
There's a couple of examples I want to bring up. Recently, we talked about this last week, I think. Jasmine Nix, who was an NXT. I mean, she was like a fairly low-level name in NXT, and she quit because she wasn't getting paid enough and turning down other opportunities that would pay her more and get her injured a lot less.
Could I stop you right there? I know you're going to say that. I just want to insert this, please. So she basically treated the business like a business and said...
Would you believe?
No, I'm just saying...
Yeah, and of all people, Booker T, who's with WWE, actually stuck up for it and said, yeah, good for you. Bubba Ray, who I guess wants to really be involved with WWE, even more than he is now, I guess, with LFG and whatnot, was like, oh, she didn't have enough passion for the business. It was like, well, so what?
So basically,
what do you mean, so what?
So basically, she's not a big enough mark for them to take advantage of her. That's what it means.
Absolutely. And here's something else, another one, the most famous example of somebody moving on with their lives and getting nothing but grief from fans and wrestlers. Who is it?
Ultimate Warrior.
No, even more.
Really?
Shane Douglas.
Oh, yeah. That irks me to no end now that you just reminded me of that. The Flair thing to make fun of a guy going through manager training in Target, that's the twisted world of wrestling. Hey, I've said it before. People think I was dying from something, but healthy is sick. Like I'm healthy now. I was obviously a little underweight, but if I'm not the size of The Rock, now they think Rock is sick when I think he looks pretty healthy.
So, just for people who don't know, Shane took a job and a managerial role in Target. It paid really well, had really great benefits. And then Ric Flair, of all people, that bastion of all that is good in pro wrestling, was making fun of him in various forms, but mostly on a WWE Legends of Wrestling roundtable episode. And he was next to Mick Foley. He took, and Mick and Rick had, it rhymes, had like made up since their fallout, years earlier, where they were taking shots at each other in their own books and everything. And he talked down to Mick like he was a piece of crap on his shoe. And then he was talking down Shane. Had nothing to do with Shane that they were talking about. He just wanted to mention it just to get a shot in. I was like, well, where's Shane now? He's happy and healthy and whatever. And you can't, I don't know if Rick's happy, but you can't call him particularly healthy.
Ric Flair is the prime example, the extreme prime example of somebody that can never and never wanted to escape the wrestling bubble. If you called him Richard Flair, he would probably lose his mind.
I've got a few follow-up questions then. How does wrestling sort of mess you up as far as like giving you unrealistic expectations of yourself or makes you act differently from societal norms? I'm not just saying, in some of the words you... Like Kevin Nash actually had a really good example, is when he got back with his family after a trip on the road, he couldn't stop swearing. And apparently he still can't stop swearing. Have you ever heard his podcast? Have you ever heard me read a quote from him? Jiminy Christmas. But it's like those little things like that sort of change the fundamental way you think or speak, that kind of thing.
Well, I think the number one thing is the word I would use, and this happens early in the business. You sit there and you work a match, you're totally doing what you want to do, you work 10 minutes, and even on the indies, you get handed $100. And you're back in the day, and you're like, well, I just made $100 for working 10 minutes. You get snake bitten. In other words, I've brought this example up in this progression or regression. The wrestling business teaches you how to be as lazy as possible and make the most amount of money. How it translates into the real world, it's not so great because you now have to work hard. And that's why I said my career was a blessing. Nothing came easy. As a matter of fact, the harder I worked, the output and the results were less, almost like a rib. So my work ethic had stayed strong when, like I said about WCW, if they paid me to sit home, they kept giving me raises. And then I wanted to go to WWE and they gave me a pay cut. I'd be like, I deserve more. I'm entitled to more. Man, beginning of the end right there. It's a really slippery slope that what makes you the most over in wrestling is the hardest post-wrestling chapters of your life because you become lazy. And you want that quick fix. And you're like, after a while, like I mentioned, the people I know that talk to these indie promoters for weeks or months leading up to the show. You can get $500 to work, but then you're flying and driving and staying in a hotel. And then all those hours talking to the promoter leading up to the show. How much you're working less for a less hourly wage than at Walmart or Target. Think about that. People say, I just worked 10 minutes and I got $500. But to me, I look at it like when someone tries to book me and I go, okay, you want me for a signing? Then I got to fly out the next day, but I got to fly in the night before. I'm leaving my two businesses and my family for almost 3 days. That doesn't translate into enough money. It's still a gift in a way, but I make more money as I say, fostering and cultivating things right here in my own home and garage.
Do you think that the pro wrestling business, unless you're in, I don't know, somewhere in corporate America, let's say you had a job there and said, do you think the pro wrestling business rendered you more liable to be taken advantage of rather than if you had just a regular blue or white collar job, I guess? Because you're constantly negotiating with very many unscrupulous people who constantly want to undercut you or whatever else it is. And because you want to remain in the pro wrestling business, you kind of eat crap and like it, I guess, to sort of stay in. Do you find that the wrestling business renders you more liable to be taken advantage of in that way compared to a regular job?
You know what the beauty about that question is? There's a lot of people that comment and say that the career I had and things that happen to me and things I share, they mirror corporate America. And I do make that analogy sometimes. There's plenty of people everywhere like that. In wrestling, it's just they're more concentrated. They're more in control of your life and future. And they never seem to go away. They're always in power. Like since the day I got into the business, WWE has two of the guys that have been there all along, Bruce Pritchard and Michael Hayes, Triple H, other people. People keep that position and people seem to fail upwards. In other words, the business is weird because in pro sports, we saw it in football just this past week. If the team's not doing well and not drawing wins or ratings or whatever you want to call it, they fire the coach, the general manager. Maybe they even get new ownership sometimes. And sometimes they release the players. But in wrestling, we got to cut 15 NXT people, but keep the people that picked them and trained them in place. But yeah, I have to sit back I've always had to sit back for 3 decades or more and look at these people and they say, these are good people you need to look up to. These are the people in control of your future. These are the locker room leaders. These are solid citizens you need to pattern your life after. I'm like, no effing way. But I have to act like they are. And then when I get out of the wrestling bubble, I'm like, thank God I don't have to gaslight myself anymore. I was being gaslit and gaslighting myself before gaslighting was a term. To convince myself, yeah, I mean, they're pretty much a piece of you know what, but they're in control and I have to act like they're good people. Nah. Austin would say, nah, not anymore.
One more thing to wrap this up. How's wrestling changed you positively as far as, I don't know, building confidence? I don't know if it got you more into fitness than you otherwise would have been. Everything from public speaking to, poise, anything like that. Things that you can say that wrestling gave you that another job probably wouldn't.
Yeah, wrestling gave me much more, actually, now that you put it that way, that I can carry for the rest of my life with this show and whatever I do. Work ethic, independent contractor. It doesn't freak me out to be my own accountant, my own travel agent, my own personal trainer, my own person that makes my itinerary, my own basically business manager as well. I did all that, learned all that. And just like the tech channel, when I did it, the knowledge I learned from wrestling and all the things along the line that at the time looked like abject failures provided the foundation that is carrying me now to make life a lot easier. I'm the one that makes life a lot harder right now with OCD. But yeah, the business gave public speaking, doing this, being comfortable. Now, sometimes I'm going to be honest with you. Sometimes I have to mentally F with myself and I have to become Stevie Richards when I'm talking to a potential collaboration brand or a sponsor. Michael Mann is still a very shy, introverted person. I know I sound insane. I have to become the character to shed all the insecurities and the things of self-esteem that Michael Mann still lacks. Now, I don't lack confidence. I'm comfortable with myself. But if I want to, perform, right now, I have to kind of lean into the character a little bit to overcome those bouts of self-doubt. See, that rhymes too.